Imaginative visions. Welcome to center stage.
Welcome everyone to imaginativevisions.com. Justin here, back with another video. This is center stage and kind of movie talk, but this is mainly going to be on center stage, folks, because today we are talking about the Broadway classic, the Broadway hit, Hadestown, the musical, and now you can get a chance to watch this in theaters as we are going to be talking about it. And you know, when I received a screener, thank you for the screener, by the way, for Hadestown, the musical, and this actually was at Tribeca Film Festival as well. So I saw a couple, obviously a couple, a little bit earlier than most, or those who went to Tribeca Film Festival. You know, I'm I'm a stickler when it comes to theater of just being in the theater watching it. Like I usually don't watch the ones that's filmed and then released to people who can't see the play because there's just something about being in the theater. And for my theater enthusiasts and people who go to theaters, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That energy, that raw production, the feel of the music, the roar of the crowd, the claps, the applause, you being able to choose with your eyes of what you want to see and how you're going to just receive it. And usually when it comes to something being filmed, that ability is kind of taken away from you. But how does it translate to film? Let's talk about it. And for the most part, folks, it actually works. The theater release is a professionally filmed, captured by the West End production. It features Reeve Carney as Orpheus, Eva Noblezada as Eurydice, Patrick Page as Hades, Amber Gray as Persephone, and then André De Shields as Hermes. And the five original Broadway performers reunited for this limited run at the London's Lyric Theatre. And this is when the production was filmed, and this is how we got our release here. So let's talk a little bit about the story without spoilers, of course, because Hadestown reimagines the mythology of Orpheus and Eurydice while intertwining their relationship with the marriage of Hades and Persephone. Orpheus is this idealistic musician who generally believes that his music can change the world, while Eurydice is far more concerned with surviving the world that currently exists. And the difference between them immediately made their relationship interesting for me because neither perspective feels completely wrong. Orpheus believes in possibilities, while Eurydice understands that hope does not put food on a table or protect someone from hardship. So their romance is contrasted by Hades and Persephone, and they're a couple who have experienced years of love, disappointment, and resentment, and actually change as well. And I really like the way the musical places these relationships between each other. Orpheus and Eurydice are discovering whether love can survive uncertainty, while Hades and Persephone are trying to determine whether love can survive everything that accumulates over time. So there's this parallel between the stories that gives each one more emotional depth and weight than rather simply watching Orpheus travel into the underworld to find his girl. And what makes the story work especially well for me is that I already know the mythology. I know where this road traditionally leads. Yet I still find myself hoping that maybe something would change. Hadestown understands that knowing the ending does not automatically remove the suspense. Sometimes knowing what's coming makes it makes that decision along the way hurt kind of even more. There is a reason why this play has won so much critical acclaim, has won a lot of Tony Awards, and it's not just the story, but we're going to talk about the music and we're going to talk about the performances. So let's talk about the performances because it's legendary. Reeve Carney is absolutely amazing as Orpheus, and I truly enjoyed his performance. Then again, just a Carney fan. I love anything that he does. He's in terms of theater and everything else. He's just good. He's just talented guy, man. And one thing I like about his performance is that he's awkward, he's emotional, idealistic, and sometimes to a point that it's painfully sincere. You know, his greatest strength is his belief in terms of the character, Orpheus. Orpheus can become better, and Carney makes that optimism feel genuine rather than foolish. And you understand why Eurydice would fall for him, even while also understanding why his worldview might frustrate someone who is constantly worried about survival. And Ava does a hell of a job as Eurydice. Much of the emotional grounding of this story is just through her. And you never feel like it was watching a character whose only purpose was to become someone Orpheus needs to, try to rescue. She has her own fears, frustrations, desires, and reason for the decisions she makes. And Ava allows people to see the vulnerability underneath all that toughness that character has, especially during the quiet moments. And her and Carney's chemistry is just absolutely electric. Now let's talk about the legendary himself, Patrick Page, as Hades. Is one word, commanding. Like, it's Patrick Page, people. His voice alone immediately changes that atmosphere whenever he enters the room, enters that scene. And he does not need to constantly yell or make Hades this physically intimidating, because the authority he just commands is already there when he speaks, moves, and carries himself. And what I also appreciate even more is, even though Hades is seen as a villain, he's not one note, because Paige gives him enough of that emotional characterization and humanity to understand that many of his actions are connected to fear, possession, and times desperation. And then we have Amber Gray as Persephone, is just a perfect counterpart to Patrick's performance, and she can be funny, unpredictable in one minute, and deeply wounded the next. And you can feel that history between these two characters, even when the production is not really explaining it, and their relationship does feel lived in. And what makes that work is the fact that it's just built based off the characterization, and also help with some of the songs. And then finally, there's André De Shields as Hermes, just a natural presence, guys, that even standing on stage and telling me what's happening becomes so entertaining. Hermes serves as our guide through the story, but the Shields just never makes that narration feel like just he's giving us exposition after exposition. It's just the way it's delivered. It's the way it's just performed, that you're part of the environment, you're part of the story. And the more I'm talking about this, the more I wish I saw this back then live. But let's talk about the songs, let's talk about the music, and let's talk about it, because the score blends folk, jazz, blues, musical theater without ever feeling like the production's jumping until unrelated styles. Like, everything fits. One of my favorite songs, Road to Hell, is one of the most fantastic introductions, because it does not slowly ease you into the production. It announces what kind of story it is and what I'm about to hear, and immediately gives Hermes control of the room. All I've Ever Known also works beautifully, because and Orpheus in the relationship generally becomes tenderness. And then you also have songs like Why We Built the Wall becomes really uncomfortable because of its repetition and the way the message gradually settles in. But I'm gonna just say this, because I don't want to talk too much and spoil certain songs, but it was great. And hearing it in the movie theater, the sound system gives it just a different presence than, I will say, the theater. The band sounds huge, it sounds overpowering with the vocals and Patrick's voice coming through the screen and the speakers. When I saw this at Tribeca, it just really hits, guys. It really does hit. And as far as the production goes, you're probably wondering, like, how's the production? One thing I really respect about Hadestown the musical, that it never seems to be embarrassed about just being theater. The musicians are visible, the stage mechanics are part of the presentation, and the production does not attempt to convince me that I'm watching a literal underground city. The rotating stage, it's pure theater that's just filmed. And the film version is directed for the screen, but it still preserves that stage production. The camera understands that the performances are the main attraction. So now for our final part is, how does it translate from stage to theater? And this is probably the most interesting part of this experience, is that for me, because there are advantages and disadvantages to seeing this Hadestown this way. And when we go to theater live, like I said earlier, you get to control your attention as opposed to if you're watching a theater production on a screen or something like this when it's filmed, that removes the freedom of you being able to look or where you want to look. And there are very different moments where I wish the camera would have stayed wider for a little longer because I wanted to really appreciate the entire stage picture and the production, the choreography. And then sometimes it's doing close-ups and you kind of like I kind of want to see the whole thing. But at the same time, I will say the close-ups are one of the biggest advantages because you get to really get close up, especially seeing Ava's face, Patrick's facial expression. So you get to see a lot more compared to actually sitting somewhere in the theater, especially if you're like in the back row. So to wrap this up, I will say this. I'm going to pull up the spotlight scale and give my rating. I'm going to give Hadestown the musical a hell of a standing ovation. This was a masterpiece, and you can see why it's won so many Tony Awards, why it's so praised. This is just an absolute phenomenal Broadway production, and definitely check this out if you get to see it in theaters. And since this also is in theaters, I'm going to do a popcorn meter as well. I'm going to give it an overflowing bucket. It's a masterpiece, captivating from start to finish. Definitely check this one out, guys. And that is going to wrap up our review of Hadestown, the musical. Definitely check this out in theaters if you get a chance. And this is Justin from Imaginative Vision Center Stage. If you like what we do here, hopefully we earned your subscription. So please hit the like button, subscribe button, and notification bell. And I'll be back with more Broadway and independent theater off-Broadway reviews very soon. So stay tuned for that. I got a couple of shows coming up around September, so stay tuned for that. And I'll catch you on the next one later days. Oh, before I go, my quick shameless plug. Don't leave yet. My first debut novel, Where Light Remains, drops August 5th. The link is in the description for the pre-order for the Kindle. Print will be available the same day, August 5th, and the Audible will be coming to you late August, so stay tuned for that. Now you can leave. Later days.